The 2020 military coup in the United States? Victor Davis Hanson wrote this week, quote, sometimes retired generals are deified, like Ulysses S. Grant and Dwight D. Eisenhower, who won 2 terms and as the president in landslide elections. At other moments, war heroes such as Douglas MacArthur and General Curtis LeMay are vilified as near insurrectionists for their blistering attacks on sitting presidents. In recent days, amid the violence and anger following the murder of Floyd George by the Minneapolis police here in the United States, we have seen the potential for a military coup against Donald J. Trump raise its ugly head. Should we be worried? Yes. This is the Rob Manus show, and it's really going to get bumpy, so tighten those belts tight and let's go. Really? A military coup in the United States, you ask? Yes, and here's why. Just days ago, retired Marine General and fired Secretary of Defense James Mattis wrote in an op ed in The Atlantic that President Trump tries to divide us and goes even further to link his actions to the Nazis of World War II. These are very contemptuous words and are only the tip of the iceberg from his letter, and they violate Article 88 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, or UCMJ, otherwise known as the law for active and retired military personnel. Victor Davis Hanson goes on in his article to expose other generals and admirals' hypocrisy in these crazy days in our country, and that is what sparks my deeply held concern about the genesis of a potential military coup. President Trump's response during these violent demonstrations was to bring in the National Guard and let the public know he may need to invoke the Insurrection Act, which means active duty forces could be deployed to states that can't control the violence or that ask for assistance. This set off an unwarranted leaking of internal deliberations with his national defense team and even led to the Secretary of Defense making public comments that he disagreed with the president. SecDef's open defiance would only be done if he felt pressured by and was comfortable with what the retired and active duty generals and admirals network response would be. This is unprecedented in our nation's history. A near mutiny by military officers against a sitting commander-in-chief hasn't happened since General George Washington had to defuse one in the Revolutionary War. Hanson goes on to highlight what former chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Martin Dempsey, said in 2016 in his editorial excoriating retired generals who are not running for office, who politicked or by extension attacked a sitting president. The American people should not wonder where their military leaders draw the line between military advice and political preference, Dempsey wrote. And our nation's soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines should not wonder about the political leanings and motivations of their leaders. Hanson suggests 4 rules of general decorum and common courtesy when our top retired military leaders go on the attack against a sitting president. First, a retired general or even a colonel like myself need not under any circumstances stoop to invoke Nazi Germany, Hitler, or fascism to criticize the current commander-in-chief. 2, any disparagements should not hint at any active resistance to, much less the removal of, an elected president other than through constitutionally mandated elections. 3, the condemnation should rest on clear, factual evidence, not emotive anger or partisan disagreement. And 4, there should be no semblance of coordination among retired military officers. They should avoid even the inadvertent appearance of a sudden chorus of like-minded retired military officers acting in concert to attack the policies of their current president with whom they disagree and who they disparage in personal terms. This sentence from Hanson should really get our attention. Quote, indeed, To do otherwise, whether by intent or inference, would suggest a harmonized effort to nullify the authority of an elected president, a dangerous escalation to extra-legal efforts that would be a first in American history, unquote. Sadly, Hanson's research and analysis thoroughly documents retired generals and admirals violating these common sense rules since at least 2016, and it's easy to document. In a building crescendo, we now find ourselves facing a greater danger to the Constitution and this country than even those Nazis, Italian fascists, Japanese imperial militarist fascists in World War II, or Soviet communism ever was, a military coup. My guest today is retired U.S. Army Cavalry Colonel, once in the National Guard of California, author and righteous cause winning attorney, Kurt Schlichter, to discuss this issue and more surrounding military use on American territory in times of insurrection. My friend Colonel Kurt Schlichter from California, or California, as a lot of us out here outside of that area like to say, joins me today because we have a serious subject, and that is, Kurt, is 2020 finally the year of the military coup in the United States, never before in its history? Should we be concerned with all these violations of the Uniform Code of Military Justice that sure look like to me when I pick up my military commander in the law book that I used as a commander for many years, that folks like Mattis and McCaffrey and a whole bunch of other ones are now coming together to do something like recommend removing a president. Huh?
Well, Rob, thanks for having me. And, I think we can all relax because these guys are bringing the same track record of success and competence to their coup that they brought to the war in Afghanistan, which continues after 20 years of chasing Muslim banditos around the mountains to no apparent effect. So if you look at the effect that Mattis and Colin Powell and all the rest of these guys have had, it's no effect. My friend Hugh Hewitt had 35 callers on the day after Mattis dropped his, turd in the punch bowl. And 35 of them said, I have not changed my opinion about Donald Trump, but many of them changed their opinion about General Mattis. The simple fact is, you and I were colonels. We weren't general officers. But there's a general officer has a different vibe, and a general officer tends to be kind of a lifer. He's a guy who is used to running an organization without a lot of dissent, with a single objective, while the United States Constitution is all about incorporating 330 million Americans, each of whom identifies and pursues his own specific interests. So I understand how they get upset when people don't fall into line. And of course, Trump is particularly offensive to them because Trump refuses to acknowledge the establishment's judgment of them. These are great heroes and you can't question them. And Trump goes, no, I'm not going to do that. You weren't that great a general. You didn't do a good job as Secretary of Defense, blah, blah, blah. And you can question Trump on the substance. For instance, I think Mattis is a great operational commander, and I think he's within the establishment they feel. And here comes a guy who won't acknowledge it.
Yeah, man. I kind of agree with you. These guys are like a bunch of cartoony Captain Crunches or Yosemite Sams out there when it comes to the Taliban, enemies of America, and all that. They haven't really won a war that they've been assigned to, these folks that are speaking out. And I'm not real concerned about them, but we should take them seriously in the vein of they speak to the masses and they represent the arrogance of the big government products that feel that they have the moral authority in this country and that Donald Trump has no moral authority, even though he's been elected by the people according to the Constitution of the United States that these yahoos have sworn to uphold and defend with their lives as necessary. Am I getting that wrong?
I think you're absolutely right. You have Colin Powell, who they insist on calling a Republican, though he hasn't voted for a Republican in 16 years. And he comes out and he's saying Donald Trump is destroying constitutional norms and he's not unifying the country. Well, if you want to unify the country, I vote you unify it again around the guy we elected. What do you mean unify around the woman who lost? I don't. Colin Powell doesn't honor constitutional norms. So I wish Jake Tapper. Well, that hopeless there. But he should go. Okay, which constitutional norms does he want to get rid of the Electoral College? Because the Democrats do. Do you, Colin Powell? Trump doesn't. Do you believe in free speech? Absolutely, because that's what the Constitution does, and the Democrats don't. Freedom of religion, Second Amendment. I mean, which constitutional norms are we talking about? He wants to act like the president when he got elected president? Is that unreasonable? And that's why they're not gaining any traction. They try and live on their reputation. And normal people are like, my son did a tour in Iraq. He got shot in the leg in Fallujah, and there were no WMDs. And I kind of feel suckered too. I was involved in chemical defense in the first Gulf War, so I kind of had a different perspective, and I was willing to believe it. And it turned out to not be true. And look, I'm perfectly happy that Saddam Hussein got hanged. But the fact is, Colin Powell said, "Trust me," and he told us something that wasn't true.
That's right, he did, Kurt. And I was in that war myself, and you know what? Yep. It was the wrong thing for them to do. It was the wrong decision. Of course, we have the benefit of hindsight now, and we're out of the fight, yep. So to speak. But you know what?
Yeah, I was a big supporter when it went down. I'm not running away from that.
I was too.
I believed these guys.
I did too.
And from what I knew, it all the pieces fit. Yeah. And then it turned out not to be so. And if they come back and said, look, we made a terrible mistake. I had this intel and it was wrong and we screwed up. But there's no humility, Rob. There's no, I was wrong and I've learned something. Instead, it's shut up and listen to me like nothing ever happened. Like 5,000 guys aren't dead.
Exactly right, Kurt. I mean, the reason I'm angry at that particular crowd is because they had the intel. I was working in the Pentagon on a project to do that war before I went back to command a bomber squadron, and we saw the intel, but it didn't tell us what we thought it was telling them and us at the time, and nobody has the guts or the courage to stand up and say, look, we really had bad intel. We thought it was right. Let's move on. We apologize for that, but we got to move on and do what we think is right by America and her soldiers and sailors, airmen, Marines, and Coasties. I can't leave the Coasties out. So, yeah, I mean, that's the issue is their arrogance that they're the moral authority. And it's not just in the Pentagon. I mean, look, these guys even got Mark Esper, who's a Harvard classmate of mine, from the Kennedy School, and I love and admire and respect him. He was a great guy as a junior officer there at Harvard with me. But geez, the general and admiral's cabal definitely made it to where he was comfortable saying he disagreed with the president on air at a press conference instead of in a private deliberation where that kind of stuff is supposed to be worked out. And I'm assuming it was worked out before he made his comments. That's very dangerous, and that's what puts the things together for me is there some network of retired and active 4-stars and senior leaders in the military that have Esper convinced that Trump has somehow done something unconstitutional or tyrannical, and we're going to get to that in a second, and he should come out and say that to make a point and maybe give himself the ability to shield himself when anything happens down the road. That's very concerning that a Secretary of Defense would feel that comfortable doing that.
Well, the nice thing is I look at this and I ask myself, what's the name of the soldier who's willing to die for Colin Powell? I mean, if you really want to talk about a coup, and that's what they're hinting around. That's what they're tap dancing around.
Yep.
Okay, who's going to be the guy who puts his life on the line? Because the generals aren't expecting to do it personally. So who are the guys who are go out and do this fighting? I spent a lot of time lately studying Roman history to inform some of my upcoming novels, which everyone should go buy. The common thing was you had these common Roman soldiers out there dying in power struggles between a couple of senators who both wanted to be emperor. And I don't think Americans are quite like that. I especially after what we saw in Iraq and Afghanistan, are American warriors going to say, well, yeah, we're gonna go out and we're gonna, threaten or maybe even hurt other Americans not to install peace, not to suppress a riot, but because of a power struggle where the establishment wants to take power back from the guy the American people elected. I think that's a big leap. And these guys, Rob, are so out of it. They actually think they have influence. I mean, Mattis probably, thought, I'm going to make this announcement and it's going to stun the world. And it stunned CNN and no one cared. And again, it's their own fault. You and I both led warriors. And I would imagine you did the same thing. I never fired a guy or came down on a guy simply because he made a mistake, an honest mistake. Now, it's dishonest, that's something else.
Yeah,
a guy who made a mistake and learned from it, you say, hey, that was stupid. You need to do X, Y, and Z. And the good ones go, oh, okay, yeah, I screwed that up, Colonel. I won't do it again. And then they didn't. These guys have no humility. They have no sense that they owe us improvement. We're supposed to conform to them. We are supposed to accept whatever they do without criticism, without critique. And they deserve both.
They absolutely do. I'll just remind our viewers that Mattis, James M., the retired four-star and fired SecDef, he earned his reputation as a combat warrior as a colonel. So, folks, listen to the colonels, because the colonels aren't tainted by ladder climbing and political infighting that the generals on the four-star level have become products of the politicizing of their leadership decisions that they have become products of, that they will obviously defend even to the detriment of their oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. So that reminds me, Kurt, exactly what has President Trump done that's even remotely unconstitutional or even contemplatively tyrannical or unconstitutional that these guys are all blabbing about?
Great question, Rob. And I'm a trial lawyer in civilian life. I was infantry in the Army, so all the big words kind of confuse and frighten me. But I do know what unconstitutional means. And if you look at it, well, he goes through a political process. When a judge, including a Hawaiian judge, who arguably has no right to put in a national injunction, he doesn't just say, I'm going to ignore it. He litigates it. He uses the constitutional system. He has yet to bar anybody from speaking. He has yet to bar anybody from exercising. As far as the Second Amendment, there's controversy over his bump stock regulations, and he will honor the result of the litigation over it. He's not just saying, well, I'm just going to do it. No, I propose this, and let's see what the courts say. He has his executive orders are generally upheld after a period, after litigation. I don't know what they're talking about. They're just saying things that sound good. Things that support their own personal view of themselves as protectors of the Constitution. Because do they really want to say, well, my preferred candidate lost, but I prefer that she have power anyway, even though she lost? Because that's what they really are saying. No one says that. You always try and clothe it in justice and adherence to law. Again, going back to the Romans, the Romans all were acting to support the Mos Maiorum, the traditions of Rome, the glory of Rome. No one's out for himself, even though they were all out for themselves. This is human nature 101. And even if you have 4 stars, you're still a human being, and you're still susceptible to these things.
Absolutely right, Kurt. But even in the specific context of these riots and the protests, and look, I'm all for people exercising their constitutional rights, and which means peacefully assemble.
Sure.
By the way, but when major cities are burning to the ground and major business districts are burning to the ground and being looted, police officers getting killed, injured. I think it's up to 750 now or so, with 5 or 6 folks either dead or near death. The retired captain from St. Louis dead. And
Yep.
and the president of the United States in his deliberations with his leadership team talks about and even publicly threatens to invoke that he might need to invoke the Insurrection Act in 2 areas, in my opinion: Washington D.C., which is not a state, and it is his responsibility to defend it, regardless of what the crazy liberal communist mayor over there says, and then potentially in Minneapolis were the 2 areas where I thought that yeah, he's probably there, especially if the Secret Service is recommending that he goes to the bunker on Friday night. So he's probably there to the point where it needs to happen, and he goes through a process that invokes the National Guard. Doesn't have to send them in without permission of one of the governors or a request from the governor. Matter of fact, in Minnesota, he and that governor, who I don't think very much of, have been working very effectively since he finally got the guard activated and in there. So there's nothing unconstitutional about that. I mean, I'm just a lowly 06 that commanded a few times and went to war and worked in the Pentagon and worked these issues, but I can't find it. I cannot find it. Why they're doing things like what they're saying, and they're even calling for the guy's removal and resistance by government officials inside the administration. These generals and admirals are doing that. Why are they doing this if we can't find that evidence?
Because they are tools of the establishment. And, the truth doesn't really matter anymore. I've got a new book coming out, 21 Biggest Lies About Donald Trump and You, which you can get on Amazon, 21 Biggest Lies About Donald Trump and You. And it talks about these things. And my problem is, it comes out on July 7th. My problem is, since the book got finalized, I actually updated it with stuff about coronavirus. And then this all happens. Every day there's more lies. And lies are a weapon. Lies are a weapon of the establishment to take back power. The simple fact is, President's fully within his rights to use the Insurrection Act. I know I was part of it last time it was used in a major way in Los Angeles in 1992. My guard unit was federalized. I was on federal active duty along with 7th Infantry Division and some Marines who were active. I then wrote a law review article and published it about military support to civil operations. Here's the punchline, Rob. I don't think that tactically it would be a good idea to have used active duty forces. And I was proven correctly because we didn't use them. Having them on standby is a different matter. But because of the differences between this protest, which was more of a protest, and the Los Angeles riot, which was more of mass criminality as opposed to kind of targeted terror information operation through largely property terrorism. I didn't think it was a good idea to do it, but I never questioned his authority to do it, nor could anyone who is a serious student of the matter.
Absolutely. You and I think, agreed on that. We didn't think it was a great idea to use active duty troops, and he didn't. You got to say he didn't. I was okay with him putting the immediate response force from the 82nd into Andrews, Joint Base Andrews, to be on standby, and they're nearby. I was okay with the National Guard. I thought it was done well. I was
under
okay.
State active duty and DC duty, which is a little different. But that means it's a tool of the state government and can work very closely with law enforcement. We trained on that all the time.
And it's the guy's #1 responsibility to defend the United States of America, which is us. It's not just outside our borders. So I was okay with that. I was even okay when he said, hey, to the governors, hey, you better get on it, or I'm going to have to come in some of these areas and take action. And I can. And in fact, he can, as you know, through the Insurrection Act and the Constitution of the United States. That's his responsibility if they can't. And many presidents have gone into states without permission or at the objections of their governors. So I didn't have any problems with any of that. And I don't have a problem with his efforts to unify the country. And this is my last discussion point question, Kurt, is I think the country's missing a huge opportunity to turn the page on our race history here by folks on the left, especially using divisive groups, messages, mission objectives like the Black Lives Matter Marxist objective of defunding the police, working with groups like that who also work with Antifa terrorist groups and the like, and even some other extremist groups that aren't Antifa. They're just anti-government. Some may even be white supremacists, but we haven't seen documentation of that. The Boogaloo Boys are an anti-government group, and the individuals involved talk about that too, but not white supremacy.
Never met one.
So I'm with I'm with the protesters, and I see this as a huge opportunity for our country to get beyond the things that caused the LA riots in the Rodney King issue that are causing this stuff with Mr. George's murder by a police officer. That's the opportunity that I'm concerned that because of all of this information operations and acts of violence, that the American people like me who want to help, who are for criminal justice reform, who want to do things like eliminate civil asset forfeiture, maybe weaken the qualified immunity, ban no-knock warrants, and definitely ban chokehold procedures by police officers. It's not necessary, and demilitarize some of them, the ones that have military equipment that they probably ought not to have, because they've used it inappropriately. What's that?
Well, here's the thing. I think most Americans feel like you do, Rob. I think most Americans are people of goodwill who are willing to hear other citizens who have legitimate concerns. That is a weapon exploited by the leftists. They exploit your goodwill and good faith because you will argue in good faith. They and talk and speak in good faith and reason in good faith, and they will conduct information operations to intimidate, silence, and force through their agenda. They are not in good faith. They're not against police abuse. They're against abuse by police they don't control. Do you think for 1 minute they will become the first Marxist government on earth not to use violence and oppression against its own people to maintain its power? Are they going to be the first ever? Absolutely not. They don't want to defund the police. They want to eliminate the police, defund you, and have a monopoly on force in our society, so they have a monopoly on power. And I know that people go, oh, Kurt, that's crazy talk. Well, I have the advantage of social media. I have the advantage of actually listening to what they say to me. I see it. When somebody tells me he wants me dead or enslaved, I will give him the benefit of the doubt that he actually wants me dead and enslaved, and I will respond accordingly.
Yeah, when leftist trollsters, I use social media too, although I'm not an expert like you and some of the other guys that I'm trying to use as my mentors, like Posobiec and even Cervic. You guys are all folks that I emulate on the positive stuff. Some of what y'all do is kind of crazy, but just kidding. But seriously,
you get a lot of fights.
Yeah, but seriously, I enjoy the fights that you generate because they are 100% necessary. But
yes,
I get it too. I mean, I just got told we needed to be, and everything and every ode to white supremacy, including me, should be wiped off the face of the earth. And I've never fought under a Confederate flag or sworn to take down the elected government of the United States.
Wow,
they're going to tell you that.
Boy, is my Hispanic immigrant wife going to be upset to hear that I somehow allegedly, supposedly support white supremacy? That's stupid.
Yeah, it's crazy, man.
It's just dumb, and it's a lie. And we have to push back all the time and never get tired. Look, the first guy who gives up is the guy who loses. The first line that breaks begins the rout, and they get run down. Again, that's history. So hold the phalanx, keep your shield up, Keep your gladius ready. Don't break. The barbarians will break on you if you don't break first.
And the main thing you see right now is people bending the knee and being forced to bend the knee and being shunned and shamed like Mayor Frey was up in Minneapolis when he refused to commit to defunding the police, of the very people that he's tried to support in his political leanings to the detriment of his own citizens. That is the issue, and that's why you're going to hear from me and people like Colonel Schlichter and others that we may agree with some of the criminal justice reforms in this bill that the Democrats have put together here just the other day and everything, but we're not going to agree with anything that supports Marxist objectives and deals and works with and coordinates with Marxist, socialist, terrorist, or any other extremist group. We're just not going to do it. We don't do it on the right, and we're not going to do it on the left. Isn't that right, Kurt?
That's absolutely right. We are not going to give in. And that's what frustrates them. Look, they can roll the conservative establishment in Washington, the Ahoy guys, the conservative ink guys, the bulwark staffers, the guys at the, at the think tanks, the guys who've never done a push-up. They can roll them. But the reason they hate us is because they can't roll us. But at least they respect and fear us. Because
Absolutely
we'll stand up. If we gave in, we'd just be, off to Siberia.
Look what just happened to Drew Brees and his family. You'll see. They got death threats that caused them to do what they did, and I'm sure they're still going to get death threats if they step out of their little socialist media mob line. I guarantee you, man. Well, hey,
imagine
thank
if
you so much.
Said no, I'm not.
Yeah, just say no. Well, tell people how to find you and your new book again, just to make sure that they heard it and we get it on the tape here, Kurt.
I want to make sure that you can follow me on Twitter at Kurt Schlichter. Check me out at Town Hall every Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And most importantly, go and pre-order my book, The 21 Biggest Lies About Donald Trump and You. The and you part is key. And let's just say I'm FCC compliant here with Rob, not necessarily in the book. So if you want unfiltered Kurt, go get 21 Biggest Lies About Donald Trump and You.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's retired U.S. Army Cavalry Colonel Kurt Schlichter, and a great attorney in fighting for righteous causes and winning, my friend. And I stole his motto that he uses, and this is an appropriate show to end this with, and that is, buy more guns and ammo, folks. You're Americans.
Power.
Well, I'd like to thank Colonel Schlichter for coming on the Rob Maness Show and help us sift through the issues surrounding what is very dangerous, a military coup in the United States. So, ladies and gentlemen, be forewarned, be on the lookout, and stay in touch with what's really happening here in our country. We need your protection. Until next week, I'll see you on the Rob Maness Show.